Friends, today is Monday, the 23rd of November, and we're in my study in the rectory. It's my day off, and today we have a gospel about a poor widow. Yesterday, you might recall, the Sunday gospel was from the Gospel of Matthew, and it was about the sheep and the goats, the parable of the sheep and the goats. Sheep on one side and the goats on the other. And in that parable of sheep and goats, which is about whether we have given to the poor, whether we have shared our gifts with others, whether we have lived the corporal works of mercy. And those who have are the right, they are the sheep, and those who have not are the goats. And Jesus says that as often as we helped one of these least ones, we helped him. And Jesus in that parable directly identifies with the poor, the only group in the gospel with which he clearly identifies. If you help this person, this poor person, you help me. Today's gospel, Monday, is about a widow who gives at the temple. A woman who gives at the temple. It's from the Gospel of Luke, who oftentimes focuses on the poor, sometimes called the Gospel of the Poor. And Luke oftentimes will speak of material things and our attachment to material goods and the fact that we need to let go of those material goods. And Jesus points out this widow in the Gospel at the temple as an example of this kind of generosity. In fact, the couple of coins she throws in, Jesus says that relative to her means, she has given more than the wealthy. A word about the temple and the temple treasury. The temple treasury was one of the courts around the Temple of Jerusalem, sometimes called the temple or the courts of the women, as far as women could go into the temple. And in that court were a number of receptacles with a kind of horn top, a metal horn top, into which you would drop coins. And because it was metal, they would rattle. And so the wealthy would kind of show off. They would drop their coins in. It would make a lot of noise. People would notice. And now this widow comes along who just drops in 2 small coins. And Jesus points her out to the disciples. He noticed a poor widow putting in 2 small coins, and he said to the disciples, I tell you truly, this poor woman put in more than all the rest. For those others have all made offerings from their surplus wealth, but she from her poverty gave her entire livelihood. From her poverty, she gave her entire livelihood. The question of giving, of course, and the generosity involved, is to ask the question, how much I have left, not how much I have given. This woman had nothing left, her entire livelihood, complete trust in God. And that's the kind of generosity that Jesus points out to the disciples, and that they too should emulate. Now, another interpretation of this gospel is given by some scripture scholars to point out the system, the unfair and unjust system, the corruption of the temple itself that led to the fact that people would give more than they really could afford. And where that money went, how it was used, the treasury. When we speak of a treasury, it means the money that was used to support the cult, the cult of the temple, and probably other uses as well, because Jesus speaks of the temple as corrupt, needing that cleansing. A couple of scenes previous to this, Jesus, his symbolic action of cleansing the temple, which had become corrupt, had become a marketplace. And thus this woman is being taken advantage of by this unjust system. But even having said that, and whatever interpretation you give to it, you can't help but think and see This person was very, very generous. A widow, a woman who has no one to look after her. Widows and orphans, of course, are always the symbol of those in need in the scriptures. And this woman gives everything she has, her livelihood, it says. There's nothing left, unless she must depend entirely on the Lord or perhaps the charity of others. That's the kind of generosity that we should have vis-a-vis the poor, the people with whom Jesus identifies. And when we serve them, we serve the Lord. Hold that thought, and we'll see you tomorrow.